Welcome to Talking Down the Highway, a Beach Boys podcast presented by Strange Currencies Music. I'm Matt.
I'm Glenn.
I'm Bowie the dog. Ruff, ruff. And I'm Tim.
Hey.
Hey.
That was Bowie.
Wow.
Yeah.
So much for our relocation.
Yeah, you blew his cover
Oh, no.
yet
Cover
again. Come on,
forgot.
Tim.
I
Come
don't
on.
listen to the show, so I forgot all about that. Hi.
Clearly don't read the pre-show memo
Nope.
that gets sent out either. All right. Hey, how you guys doing?
Good.
Yeah.
Been a long time.
Yeah.
We do this joke every time.
We do, yeah. And still haven't stood up. I still have the backwash of a Imperial Abbey cider here. I didn't even run upstairs between
We
episodes
didn't
to
even
get a
get
new
a-
one.
Yeah, no refills. Man.
I offered.
All right.
You sat over there coughing,
I
though.
was coughing too much. It's all right. Whatever.
All right. Well, hey, anything exciting? Anything new?
The only new thing is that I'm rating it a Brian.
Already?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
What the hell are you doing?
Spoiler alert.
I'm sorry.
Spoiler alert.
I got confused.
Yeah.
Spoiler
Wait,
alert.
you're referring to the last one, Beach Boys Party?
No.
You've upgraded to the vaunted Brian category?
Sure.
This was a
It was quite a party.
This was a strange week of preparation, is what I have to say. It's
Okay.
because we have prepared with.
Nobody knows what we're talking about.
Yeah,
yet.
they do. They've read the
Stop
title
it.
of the episode.
Hey,
We're just
hey,
so
dude,
excited
don't
to
even,
talk
don't
Beach
even.
Boys.
Don't fuck
We're
with the formula.
so excited
Don't
to talk.
fuck with the formula.
Hey, if this album wouldn't have been made if no one had fucked with the formula.
Well, and
okay.
we would be better off for it. Yeah.
Villain.
Yeah, don't
Matt.
fuck with the formula. All right. Well, hey, let's take a quick break because we got a lot to
Yeah,
talk
we
about this week. This is a special one. We'll be right back. All right, and we're back on Talking Down the Highway. This week, we made it. We made it to the top of the mountain,
We
folks.
made it all the way.
We are here to talk about pet sounds. Now, look,
interesting.
Clearly, the band thinks very little of this record. And why? They did not even put an exclamation point after the title.
No
And
exclamation
this is the
point.
first one in several years in
Yeah.
which they have not put an exclamation point after pet sounds.
Why would anyone even want to listen to it
Yeah.
without the exclamation point to tell them that it's important?
I'm not hyped for this.
Yeah.
I have very little expectation of this record that
There's
I've
like
never listened to before until
like
right now.
Goat or something?
downer.
Yeah.
Like, oh, animals like this music.
Yeah.
Cool. It's a bunch of Old MacDonald had a farm songs.
Must
and
be.
shit like that. Yeah.
Dogs barking.
Who would do that in
Bullshit
music?
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Pet Sounds. I give it a Brian.
Stop it. Don't fuck with the formula.
Glenn was saying
Yeah, it's
this
good.
week we had to listen to Party and Pet Sounds, which
Yeah.
is very there's a
It's
contrast.
pretty
there.
jarring, yeah.
Yeah.
But still,
Are we
rewarding.
just gonna drop the pretense on the whole rating of this?
I think so.
Okay.
So
Fine. If you're going out there already, Tim, I'm gonna give it a Brian. Fine. We know what we're doing here. Okay. Everybody knows what we're doing here. The reason why music snobs ever paid attention to this band and then discovered all of the other great stuff within their catalog is because of this album.
Yeah.
Right. It is a. It is the Brianiest Brian that ever Brian.
I didn't know you were
Okay,
gonna do
like
that. That's great.
this is not.
yeah.
Oh, this is a 9.5 or a 9.6. This is a fucking 10
Yeah.
if there has ever been a 10.
There's ever been one.
10.5.
This is, I'm going to say it, the greatest pop album of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. 100%.
I'm going to go further. This is my favorite piece of art, period.
Oh, wow.
Better
Okay.
than any film, better than any, I don't know.
Starry Night.
Yeah, better than any book. better than any. This is better than any Beatles album.
Oh yeah.
It's the best fucking album.
And not just musically, like production-wise, everything.
It is so goddamn perfect.
Yeah.
So fucking good.
Wow.
I gotta say,
We are going to drop the pretense. Of course, it's a fucking Brian, because this is why Brian is Brian. This is why we
It's what
love
we've been
this guy.
building up
this
to.
is
This whole
unfettered Brian.
This is the payoff of having to listen to Shut Down Volume 2 and hear, Cassius Wilson,
Sonny Liston,
Sonny,
yeah.
Bull sessions with Big Daddy.
yeah. This is the payoff. This is the you made it.
So
Now revel in the glory that is fucking Pet Sounds.
okay, but is it that is it that great in its own right, or is it just because of the story?
No, in its own right. I finally got some like really good earbuds, and I listened to it with them last night. And granted, this was a stereo mix. This was the one that's just labeled Pet Sounds on Spotify, but it's just transcendent. Yeah. All the stuff that's going on,
And I think maybe the excitement that we have of having listened to all of that root beer and county fairs has
Elevated it?
elevated it even more. But even just as
out of context
on its own,
I
it
think
is
so.
it is
don't,
fantastic.
you don't need the story.
But the story makes it even better.
Right. Yeah,
And so I think we need to talk about some of the context of what's come to kind of set the groundwork. What year is it?
So it's 1965 when Brian's starting working on this. For zooming out just a little bit in terms of context, he stopped touring with the group about a year before. Had a breakdown, and he basically says, "I'm going to retire to the studio. I'm going to prepare the backing tracks. I'm going to do all this. You guys go out and you keep doing the touring. You keep making the public appearances, but I'm going to be working on the studio." And so we've been talking about the run-up. I mean, Today, glorious record. Just beautiful, beautiful album, especially that second side of it. Summer Days and Summer Nights, Brian's reestablishing, like, I can have complex arrangements and still make hits. I don't have to stick to, the formula and be able to deliver. I can make pop music that is amazingly arranged, that is still catchy, that people are still going to love and still buy, and that will also have just a depth to it. And then, Party, it's like, well, I got to give him something. Q4. But he's been on this trajectory now of becoming a studio artist, working with musicians who are not in the band. This album is almost all studio musicians, the so-called Wrecking Crew. Sorry, Carol Kay, I know you were never really called that, but this is Brian Wilson makes a record and then has his bandmates sing on it occasionally,
and not even as much as previous albums. There really aren't.
He takes more leads than ever before.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not a very choir boy kind of thing going on.
Just so that it's said, you've mentioned this and we've alluded to the formula multiple times. Could we just put it out there? What is the formula?
The formula is 2.5-minute songs about cars and girls and surfing.
Right. And that's what sells records, and that's what poor Brian has been hamstrung to.
We've already established that they're literally they're Capitol Records milking him,
right?
Literally,
please,
yes. And Mike Love is down there, in the action as well too, profiting and encouraging Brian to keep producing milk or the formula. And
we
Brian's
finally pushed them aside.
Brian started, for more context, he's starting to hang out with hipper people.
Yeah,
he's starting to make inroads with the cool, L.A. musician artists scene. He's doing drugs. He's displaying some of the early signs of the other part of Brian Wilson's story, right? But he is reaching for something higher at this point.
And staying home from tour really allowed him to spend a lot of time with his stuff.
He doesn't have to fucking go to every county fair singing fun.
Right.
He's at home making art.
The other guys were touring Japan and Hawaii. Yep. Basically, he got most of the album done, I think, before they got back. And that movie, Love and Mercy, depicts that as, they're all coming into the studio excited, and then they're like, "What the hell
they're
is
like
this
fucking
stuff?"
king shit and the Golden Boys, there,
Right.
you know, like ready to
And they're
to kick ass and take names. And Brian's like, nope, we're doing this now.
right.
Fucking deal with it.
Wait. So Brian has had this kind of, I don't know, a moment of clarity, or people are finally left him alone. They're off dressing up like samurais in Japan.
Yeah.
Hey, it sounds like it's time.
That's not your job. Glenn, you need to understand that there's a formula for a reason. You don't fuck with the formula. And on that note, it sounds like it's time for an episode of Sound and Vision.
Reasonable.
Oh yeah, it's Sound and Vision, where we discuss all things aesthetic using the scale provided to us by David Bowie. If we really, really like something, Glenn, now you may speak. We give it a
Hunky dory.
Ooh.
no.
Low.
Low.
Sorry.
David Bowie's masterpiece.
Sorry.
If
that
we really
formula.
don't like something, Tim, it's a
I can't think of a joke one, so never let me down.
never let me down. In which David Bowie really let us down. And David, it's not too. Oh wait, it is.
He's dead.
Yeah.
Damn, it is too late.
Yeah.
He can't even make amends.
Hey, second Bowie reference.
Black Star was great though. Way to end on a high note, David. We love you too. All right. And then if something's in the middle,
Let's dance.
let's dance. David Bowie's okayest album. Yeah. Hey.
This episode of Sound and Vision, I think, might be control.
It could be. I've
Because
been wondering for a while where we're going to come down on
The
this.
artwork on this is well, it's polarizing. It is a little goofy.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I don't know if we can do this in a vacuum, but if we just if we strip away all societal context and we say just the word pet sounds, what comes to your mind?
Well, I mean, it could be a pet project.
Okay.
Reference to that, or
Sounds are like my pets. I love these
Yeah,
sounds.
yeah.
These are my sounds.
or
Okay.
or literal animal
Or is it literal
noises.
noises of animals? Okay. All right.
And they're at kind of a petting zoo kind of situation on the cover. There's like,
Right. So that's
goats and
where it's
whatnot,
like
they're
on the
feeding them.
nose. They're feeding goats.
well, so as far as in a vacuum, I try to think of like if you're digging through if the Beach Boys were never famous or you didn't know who they were and you're digging through like a dollar section at the record store and you find some goofy looking album, like this is the kind of thing I probably would pick up and buy for $2 or whatever because it's dudes feeding goats.
Yeah.
But in context, I don't know what like a Beach Boys fan is gonna think of it necessarily. It makes
Right.
sense as
And-
a departure.
Right. And so maybe it is a departure. It's like if you think you know the Beach Boys, this is what really the Beach Boys is. This is what our real heart, our pet sounds are. This is what when we're vulnerable in our own rights.
Yeah, or this is what we're like now that we smoke pot, something like that.
Yeah, so okay. So that's the difficult part for me is, Capitol Records. I don't know whose idea it was to take a picture with some goats.
They're at the San Diego Zoo too, I believe. Right?
Is it?
that,
Okay. So,
We'll have to fact check that.
the album's called Pet Sounds, which
Justin, if you could fact check that. Justin's our loyal fact checker. Thanks for
appreciate
listening
that.
too, buddy.
Well, we also Al could let us know.
Oh yeah, hey Al.
Forgot about Al.
All right, yeah, Al. You can call me Al.
Whose idea was that? Who's got a season pass to the San Diego Zoo? That's what I want to know. Did they pay to get in?
Probably. I don't know. Yeah, I've been wondering where are we going to go with this one.
I love the color scheme.
The color scheme is glorious.
I love the font selection. It's iconic.
Cooper Black,
that
right?
Cooper Black. I'm gonna.
If we're just talking like typeface and all that stuff and color scheme, like look at a non-real version of Pet Sounds. All right, like I go into record stores and every once in a while I come across this terrible one that is like brown and has a different font on it, and I just go, this is terrible. I hate it, hate it. And then I'm scrolling through Rate Your Music right now and looking at the alternate ones. And there's like this terrible one that came on a label called Chongsheng, which is apparently Taiwanese, that just looks awful. There's one that literally has the cover from Summer Days and Summer Nights on it in black and white, which makes Mike Love look like he's not just wearing blackface, but literally all entirely black. And it just says Pet Sounds on it. And it's fucking terrible and it makes me angry. And then I look at this and I'm like, oh yeah, this is right. This is perfect. Because I don't know. Is it the music
is
that
that
I just
Pavlovian?
associate?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. But then I look even a little bit closer and I see, holy fuck, Dennis is literally not feeding anything. He's dangling this whatever it is, kibbles and bits that he stole out of Mike Love's mouth, and he's dangling it in front of a non-existent animal.
Interesting. And he's dressed like an Amish person or something.
And he's dressed like a fucking Amish guy who just dropped his hat. And I think it's a fucking low.
And
because it's a fucking low.
Okay.
It's a low.
Yeah. And
Perfect.
Look at Mike.
Bald
he's
as
on
fuck.
the outside.
Yeah,
bald.
he's on the outside.
He's angry.
Bald. They didn't even let him wear a hat for it.
Well,
low, freaking low. He's
actually wearing clothes because they're like, no, you're not going to walk around with no shirt on for this one because this is a fucking masterpiece. And get the fuck over it. Put clothes on. Take off that stupid looking hat that you're always wearing. It's a fucking low.
Yeah, it's a low.
Because everything about this album is perfect.
Yeah, it's low.
Low.
Yeah, I'll give it a low.
Yes.
I was going to say that this is jumping ahead a little bit, but this album cover photo aside, this is the beginning of the Mike Love baldness-induced permanent hat era.
Oh, after this, all hats.
Well, all the pictures from these sessions, he's wearing that kind of like driving cap.
Oh, yeah.
And there's even a music video, promotional film they did for Sloop John B, where they're all like in a
pool.
swimming pool,
And he's still wearing
jumping
that
around.
fucking hat.
The hat never comes off. Like Bruce is also wearing a hat at times because it's like a captain's hat, but he takes it off. It's off and on, whatever. Mike's is
How
like
did they find a hat big enough for Bruce?
Yeah, well, it's very roomy.
Did they make it out of four other hats?
It could fit my head, that's for sure.
Jesus.
But yeah, Mike's hat is just like spot welded onto his skull or something. Like he's in and out of the water.
Do you have a size
never
14
comes out.
hat?
So I'm thinking like he's not completely bald in this photo, but this is where he starts to really go bald.
It's thin.
Because I don't think you see his head ever again after this point.
That is some thin hair. I don't know. You do see it in that picture that we did for the car club meme, where he's sitting there meditating.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. No, it's a low.
Also on the back, there are a couple of compilation photos on the back, and
very puzzling.
Yeah, it is
samurai thing.
The samurai,
literally dressed like samurai.
It is bizarre.
And I guess our thought was that they were touring Japan, so maybe they were just doing a thing there. But
those are just the photos that were on the file at the time.
Is there makeup involved too? I think
there was some kabuki makeup in there somewhere. I don't know who's
wearing and then you got these ones of Brian where he's like, Brian's sitting there at a piano at home while the rest of them are out touring the world. Brian's in his car just looking out the window while the rest of them are touring the world. And,
Again, more separation. It's clear that this is a Brian Wilson album.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah.
So good.
Low. All right, good.
Yeah.
I'm glad we could come to that
great episode.
Consensus. All right. Excellent episode.
Okay, so more about context here.
So I mean, Tony Asher, right? So part of the thing when Brian's on his own is he meets this guy, Tony Asher, who was like a madman kind of dude. He worked for an ad agency, working on jingles and writing copy.
Was in the studio working on a literal commercial jingle.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
And stumbles in, and Brian's at the piano, and they strike up a conversation.
Yeah, so they meet, but then he doesn't really try to employ him as a collaborator until... What's his name? Schwartz or something? The guy that introduced Brian to LSD tells him that he's a writer, and maybe he could help you out. And so they get together, ostensibly for Tony to write the lyrics and Brian to write the music. But reading about it, it was a lot more collaborative than that. Like some of the songs, they definitely bounced ideas off each other. There's a quote from Asher in Wikipedia. I don't know what the original source was, but he describes himself as an interpreter for Brian. So like, this is Brian's idea. These are the words, his words, but like, let's, smooth them out and make them a little bit flow better, make them more poetic or whatever. So he was like,
there's interviews where Asher would go and he would just hang out for an hour and just kind of sit and they would talk and then things that makes sense that I hadn't heard that interpreter, but that feels like what I've gathered from documentaries.
There was one song that was not co-written by him. I can't remember what it was. It might have been Waiting for the Day.
But here's the other interesting point in the development of this is, up until now, I think we've all kind of acknowledged that Brian Wilson lyrically isn't where his maybe strong suit or where his focus is. He really thrives on what he hears in his head, and he really needs someone to help kind of focus those, or maybe interpret those ideas or those concepts into lyrics. And up until now, he's had Mike Love, freaking putting root beer and county fairs on the.
Fine for high school whatever songs,
but now there's definitely a maturing. There's definitely this is who we really are. If this was just a show to sell albums and to make a live album that tops the Billboard charts, this is where it feels like Brian is actually opening up his soul and exposing who he is. This is who he is. Pet. These are the sounds in his head. This is what I've been working towards, and so it makes sense that somebody else from the outside would have to come in to kind of tap into that or see that.
Well, yeah, he's got a sympathetic character, working with him in terms of wanting to actually, I don't know, translate as we said his emotion into something there, and I don't know. I mean, as we've said before, Brian's strength is not in lyrics, and it's telling that the two greatest pieces that he composes are one in which he has, Tony Asher here, Van Dyke Parks on the other, and where Mike Love's influence is very, very much diminished. Mike ends up eventually, I guess, getting some co-writing credits on a few of these songs.
No, he does not.
Oh, he literally does because he tells Brian that hang on to your ego.
Oh, that's right.
Can't be hang on to your ego,
No!
and so it has to be
so much worse.
I know there's an
so much worse.
He apparently gets a credit for "Wouldn't It Be Nice?" I don't know.
So credit for ruining.
Does he really quietly go, "Yeah"?
No. Here's the factoid I found out about that. I forget if this was Tony Asher who said this. So I don't know if it's true. But
you know what? Hold on a minute. It sounds like it's time for an episode of Heroes and Villains.
Doing both. All right.
That's right. It's Heroes and Villains. We'll discuss the heroes and the villains, whatever it is that we happen to be discussing this weekend. This week, we're talking about Pet Sounds, Part 1. And, all right, we've already established here. Hero, Tony Asher. And dude fucking does some great work on this album.
Yeah. Thank you, Tony.
It's the first Beach Boys album where you can look at the lyrics and say, damn, these are really good. Tony. Great work. I mean, obviously, if we're talking about Pet Sounds, it goes without saying that Brian Wilson... We love you, Brian.
But you get a sense...
Fucking great work. Good job here, buddy. Really.
You get a sense that this was in Brian's head all along, but it took Tony to be able to pull it out.
Yeah, Tony's critical here.
He was surrounded by a bunch of dipshits like Mike Love and Murray Wilson telling him he's an idiot and questioning his ability.
And conversely, you got Tony Asher, who's, surrounded by a bunch of, corporate, people, and he's got an opportunity to take his creative talents to an actual genius too. Here's two artists finding each other at a really opportune time for both of them. They create something glorious together. So Tony, well
Thank you,
done,
Tony.
buddy.
Yeah,
knocks it out of the fucking park. And then the villain. Don't fuck with the formula. Ego music.
Right.
Fuck you, Mike Love. If you had your way, this album would not even have come out. And you continue to make money off of it. You continue to have a career because of this.
Disgusting.
Screw you, Mike Love. Go to hell.
Yeah.
And hang on to your ego is infinitely better than I know there's an answer.
So much better. Yeah.
It's the one thing about this album that I would change if I had any ability to change anything about it. It would just be
the original.
to have the original chorus of that song.
And it does exist. It
does, yeah.
Some releases have it as the very last track. But yeah, it should have just...
Frank Black
you might as well
covers
just
it,
swap
'cause Frank
in.
Black is
Black's-
also a hero.
Oh, nice.
good
So
one.
yeah, villain Mike Love.
Yeah.
All right.
Eternally.
So, but here's the thing about Wouldn't It Be Nice?
Yeah,
It's
go ahead.
hilarious.
All right.
Is that apparently his sole contribution, and he got credit for it, like he's a co-writer now, is "Good Night, My Baby."
Oh my God.
Sleep tight, my baby. Literally
Oh my
just that.
gosh. And that gave him a writer's
Right.
credit.
I mean, that's, yeah.
Stupid.
And also, I made reference to it before about the song that does not have Tony Asher as a co-writer, which is I'm Waiting for the Day. And apparently that one was fully written by Brian, but then Mike Love altered 8 words and was able to get credit for it because of that in the lawsuit. This is all from the lawsuit in 94.
My goodness.
But I'm surprised, like Waiting for the Day. I mean, I don't know what those 8 words were, but lyrically that's pretty solid too for being a Brian composition.
Fucking Mike.
Anyway, that's Mike Love.
I need to take a break for a minute. Yeah, we'll be right
Oh,
back.
wait. Brian Mike Love wrote the lyrics for Let's Go Away for a While.
Yeah. Hey, we'll be right back.
Let's go away for a while. And we're back. Tim, what are we back to do?
We're more context.
Okay, yes.
So there's this
Wikipedia
That sounded
contest.
really organic,
The
guys.
Yeah.
Wikipedia,
Wikipedia
is like
context.
a Moby Dick size
Okay.
novel, so
It
we
is.
can't touch on everything. But a couple interesting things that I noticed were that this was primarily influenced by Rubber Soul, right? Because Brian saw it as but
Not so much in sound, but
Well,
in spirit. Like,
in
you
spirit,
can make an
but
album
listen.
where every song is good.
exactly, but he was influenced by the American release, which
Yeah.
kind of blows my mind.
Yeah.
Because it's quite a bit different from the British release. There weren't even some songs are missing altogether.
Yes, it starts with I've Just Seen a Face.
Right, there's 2 songs from Help on it. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. Whatever. Tony Asher kind of introduced Brian to jazz in this process and was like kind of opening his mind as far as like arrangements, was encouraging him to use more orchestral kind of instruments and things like that. The fact that this is, very complex but still poppy, catchy music, something that Brian, I think, was intentionally doing. At some point, he describes it as chapel rock or commercial choir music.
Now, you mentioned jazz, and I guess I hear some jazz in here. But this album always it's very
doo-wop.
exotica
and doo-wop, yeah.
It's really like the Martin Denny, Les Baxter
Yep.
kind of cinematic sort of thing, which I like that stuff.
Another quick factoid. Apparently, Brian used a Shure 545 for his vocals, which is basically a predecessor to the SM57.
Wow.
Yeah, for vocals.
For vocals.
And the other guys
throw
used...
this Neumann away.
Well, yeah, the other guys were using Neumanns, but apparently he used that one, which is
all right,
strange.
Interesting.
There were times when he recorded each voice of the guys separately so he could have better control over the individual voices in the mix. Once the album was finished and the mixing process started, it was done in one 9-hour session, which is crazy. Let's see. Oh, just real quick. There's a whole section on Wikipedia called group infighting, which...
Some interstitial squabbles.
Interstitial squabbles.
Wow.
But it talks about that, there's a lot of denial that the guys didn't like the stuff. Like, oh no, like Carl especially is like, no, we knew it was brilliant and great. It was just like kind of like a little bit caught us off guard or whatever. But it does definitely acknowledge that Mike Love didn't like. I know there's hang on to your ego, but also Al was in that camp too, apparently. Al and Mike both were a little like,
Al.
Right.
Come on.
Really?
We thought you were Team Brian.
But, he is the folky guy, I guess. I don't know. He maybe is a little bit more traditional.
He got Sloop John B on the
Right. He did, which is great. But here's a quote from him I just want to read because it's funny, from Al Jardine. He explained that, quote, "It took us quite a while to adjust to the new material because it wasn't music you could necessarily dance to. It was more like music you could make love to." It's just a bizarre
Interesting
thing to say.
for Al. Okay.
Yeah, but
So-
apparently, just one little thing is apparently this is surprising to me. While they were on tour, allegedly Brian was calling Mike and like sort of playing him the songs, and like he was the only one that had heard any of the songs in advance. The other guys got there, and it was a surprise to them, but apparently he was kind of in on it, so that was kind of interesting.
See, you had mentioned some of this before, Matt, in the context that this is kind of where, we've ushered in this narrative that Brian is on his own now, and the influences from before are kind of away, and that he's now being more influenced by this quote unquote cool LA. And my question for that, and I think that's what some criticism is. That people have criticisms of Pet Sounds is they'll say something like, oh, this is them just trying to be edgy, or them trying to be cool, or them, now just on drugs. And I wonder, like, if that dismissal of this, that doesn't seem authentic to me.
No.
It seems to me like that Brian was not being surrounded now by quote unquote cool people, but by quote unquote maybe more authentic people or more empathetic people or people who maybe saw him for who he was and weren't like trying to make him something.
Well, I guess that's debatable.
It's not edgy in the least.
Right.
It's not even cool. It's like aggressively square.
And so that's
which
my
is
point.
one of the things that's so great about it, because it's so honest and like there's not that pretense at all. It just feels so authentic and heartfelt.
Exactly. And I think that's what separates it from some of that early corny Beach Boy stuff, is that early corny Beach Boy stuff sometimes seems like it's them trying to be cool and trying to be like, take us seriously.
Yeah.
But they're square, and they're like, it's not that they're square that's wrong.
Yeah.
It's that they're not being like honest, and they're being kind of dicks about it. Like they're like, let's make some money.
It's from the autobiographical elements and like the sort of emotional narrative of the songs. It's not, he's not singing about cars. He's singing about like, a breakup or trying to
insecurities,
nonverbal communication. Things like that, insecurities for sure. So yeah,
and it's like embracing that non-cool. Like we'll get into specific tracks, but that's not me. It's like anti-cool. It's like everybody's telling me as I'm trying to do this cool that's not me, and I wanted to get back to who I was, and there's no like sure he's hanging out with those turned on people or whatever, but he's authentically himself on this record.
And that's what I wanted to point out. We did an episode about the made for TV movie, the Stamos Tour de Force, where around this time he's starting to go to these drugged out parties, and it makes it appear that now he's embracing this hippy dippy LSD drugged out, and that's what's able to. This is a drug album. And I'm like,
Well, I mean, it is in the sense that he's tapping into other, elements there. But it's, again, I say it's presented without pretense. It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's druggy, yes. But that's not an inherently inauthentic or bad thing.
Right. It's more honest than.
I mean, unfortunately, we know what the drug's impact would be on him, right? But he is reaching a little bit more of a sense of who he is through this process of making this record and being in among these other people. He's becoming much more like self-reflective than ever before, and that's coming out in his art. And I think the drugs are probably part of that for him, but it's just he has some incredibly unfortunate side effects of all of that process too.
And it's not just pot; it's like psychedelics, like LSD, which can really kind of rewire your brain or make you see the world. I've never done it, but make you kind of reevaluate life and things like that. I would think so. Maybe unlock certain things within him. But yeah, he's not trying to fit any mold anymore at this point. I think
He's just being Brian.
And his hangers on or whatever, his sort of crowd he was hanging out with, they're portrayed in that movie for sure as just being kind of like leeches and bad influences,
which is perhaps ironic because
I'm sure some of them were just leeching,
maybe,
but like I don't know. I wasn't there, and I don't know if I haven't read any any biographies or anything like that either.
Yeah,
So
well, and I want to get into that stuff more when we talk about Smile, because I think
Right.
that was much more of a presence during the Smile sessions.
Yeah.
I think during Pet Sounds, he was still just living as a 25-year-old married dude, and 24, however old he was, maybe 23 even. Jeez, makes me feel
he quit touring when he was 22. So I don't know where that puts him.
Either way, I feel like a lot of that whole narrative in that movie, at least, gets tied to Pet Sounds, but it's really more of the Smile.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe we come back and talk about the hangers on and all that, because there is a super, super negative portrayal of all of those folks in that. And many of those people were like really important artistic influences and supportive personal individuals to Brian. And but we haven't got to that part of the film yet, I guess, either. So
I did watch part 2 with my dad in Oklahoma.
All
So
right.
anytime we want to do that episode.
Okay. Sooner rather than later. But anyway, I want to talk about some of these songs.
Yeah.
So let's take another quick break, and we'll come back and start breaking down side A here.
We're back, and we're talking about Pet Sounds, the actual songs. Side 1, Wouldn't It Be Nice? Perfect song.
Perfect song.
You're
You're going to say that a few times here, I
the
think. But yeah.
plucking at the beginning was apparently a mando guitar, which is like a mandolin/guitar thing. Fox made them. They plugged it right into the soundboard, apparently.
All right.
Yeah, great.
I think there's also a 12-string in there.
Probably.
As well, too.
There's all kinds
There's
of
so
stuff.
much layering, and one of the
Right.
great things about here is he's combining instruments that just sound like new instruments when you put certain things together.
Well, and what I like here too, we talked about the microphone he used for his vocals. I don't know if that has to do with it, but like the very beginning, it sounds kind of swimmy and reverby, the instrumental part. But then his voice kicks in and it just cuts right through. Has to do with his performance and I think the recording and production or whatever. But I like that combination because he's not super reverbed, but some of the instrumentation is, and I like that sort of combination, I guess. It's great, just sonically perfect.
So great. You mentioned
Great song.
listening to it on headphones a little bit ago, and the first time I ever heard this album, I mean, that's one of those songs you heard growing up, right? Of course.
Right.
But the first time I ever listened to Pet Sounds as an album was on headphones. I got the CD in very, very late 1998. And laid down, listened to it on headphones, dark all around, and obviously, that instrumental intro is great. But for me, that moment in which the whole sonic spectrum opens up when all of the backing vocals come in that second verse was just like, oh, holy shit!
Yeah,
I get what people are talking about
Right.
now with this record.
Yeah.
I'm even just getting goosebumps talking about it right now. Just so glorious sounding. Perfect song.
And this apparently was the only one that Brian had fully written with the melody and everything before bringing in Tony Asher. And apparently he had, like, Brian had some strong ideas about the lyrical content too, and to the point where Asher actually had to go home and just listen to it on his own and come up with lyrics and then bring it back to Brian, and then they kind of hammered him out from there, like fixed him up. But yeah.
My favorite part is the shotgun at the beginning, that timpani, the boom. Yeah, so good. I went back. I was there. Apple Music has like some music videos of Beach Boys that have been done relatively recently, and it's almost like it's a story arc. All 4 of the videos. It's like Barbara Ann and I Get Around, and then Wouldn't It Be Nice? And it follows this couple and this is the meet cute. They kind of meet. And when that timpani hits, the kid's a photographer for his high school yearbook, and the shutter flashes and the drum hits, and it's just like it opens up, and it's like we've come. It's kind of this cinematic moment, and I think that's what this cinematic is what it feels like to me.
Yeah. This, by the way, albumlinernotes.com. Did I mention that on air already?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Has a really good section from the CD, stereo mono CD release from 99. Has all the personnel credits for every single song. the time that they were recorded. This is recorded from 7 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. on January 22nd, 1966. And all the instrumentation, it's really cool. Carol Kay, electric bass, drums, Hal Blaine. There are accordions, sax, trumpet, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. So good.
Good shit.
Just glorious. All right. You Still Believe in Me.
Track 2.
What a piece of junk. No, also great.
Oh, so the intro to this was allegedly them plucking the strings of a piano with hairpins.
Yeah, they were doing a lot of like different treated piano stuff on this one.
And in the movie, not the TV movie, but Love and Mercy, it shows them as having hairpins also on the strings to give it that sort of buzzy sound.
Yeah.
But I didn't see that, written anywhere. But it sounds like it. It would make sense that they kind of did that for added effect. But cool little sound.
Yeah.
My notes,
bike bell.
Yeah. My notes are there's so much going on, so rich. The clarinet sounds like a recorder, or maybe there's an ocarina in there. I don't see ocarina on the list. But there's some high-pitched sort of like whistly sound. But there's so many layers. And the bike horn at the end. There's just a lot going on.
Yeah.
Good shit. It's almost hard to even have comments for these songs. It's like they're all, each one is just like perfect.
I'm tempted to like that's part of my issue. Like going through and preparing for this.
Yeah,
I almost don't want to listen to it too much because every time I listen to it, it's like, oh my goodness.
Right.
And one of the glorious moments for me with that expanded edition of it is I went through and just listened to the instrumentals only. And took some time, just listening to it. And it was even hard. I tend to like to listen to music when I fall asleep. But even just the instrumental track, I couldn't because I was hearing all the little things. And I could hear the lyrics that were part of it. But then I was noticing things that I didn't notice because I was focusing on... And like this is one of those albums that you could listen to so many times because of all that,
something new every
that
time.
ocarina or whatever thing that you notice. But I also don't want to listen to it too much because I don't want to. There's something special about it that it just has that.
It's rich. It's deep enough that you can listen to it over and over. I think without getting sick of it or anything like that. But yeah, there's a lot going on. We could, I guess, talk a little bit about the content of the lyrics, but that's maybe too much to talk about too. This is introspective, like we said, vulnerable. It says in Wilson's words, the song was about a man who feels free to express his love for people from the perspective of a girl. I don't know what that means. Anyway, good song.
Yeah, it's so warm. There's just this lush, but there's depth. It's just got that classic like Brian melancholy, but it's not sad.
Yeah,
I don't know. Just so much of a I don't know. Yeah. Emotionally complex piece. I love it.
Right, and the arrangement reflects that. The composition, like that, like near the end where it gets completely quiet, and then boom, it comes back in with all the voices and does that a couple times. Yeah. Really good.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, That's Not Me.
That's Not Me. Track 3. This is the one that I think is it's Brian, Carl, and Dennis playing the instruments, and then there were overdubs later. So it's almost just like a Beach Boys song, like as a band.
Yeah, it does credit Glenn Campbell with a 12-string guitar on here, which
that
is
was an overdub.
Such a great hook.
Yeah,
I love that.
So the session itself just had drums, guitar, and organ. Overdubs were string-based, electric bass, 12-string, and percussion. So you got Carol Kay, Lyle Ritz, Glenn Campbell, and Frank Capp. I love the minimalism of it, especially after such a layered song. It's like it's a contrast, and it's a little bit more up tempo, but still very introspective. It's great.
Yeah. I mean,
we talked about this before a little bit when you're talking about being uncool.
Oh yeah, and it sort of embraces that.
Yeah.
Right. You're putting yourself out there. You're like changing who you are, but you're starting to question some of those changes, and I don't know, reconciling that with the things that you had shunned. I don't know. There's a depth to it. It's great. It's a perfect like I'm 21 years old kind of song, and figuring out who the fuck I am kind of a thing.
And I think it's Mike lead.
It is. Yeah. And you know what? He does fine.
Yeah.
He does fine with it. That's the nicest thing I'm ever going to say about Mike Love. All right, no, great song. This is the one that's been kind of the grower for me. I feel like when I first really got into Pet Sounds, this was maybe like my least favorite track on it. But I mean, you're also talking about very like, all right, it's all relative. But
yeah, I don't think I have a least favorite track. Like that's the other thing. I don't even think about that.
It's great. It's great. All right, don't talk. Put your head on my shoulder. Don't tell me what to do, Brian.
My notice is that it sounds like sedatives, but in a good way. Yeah. It's dreamy and thick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is the memorable moment for me. I was able to pull a dad joke watching this at the 50th anniversary of Pet Sounds. Got tickets to see Brian Wilson perform Pet Sounds on the 50th anniversary.
I think I got you those tickets.
You did, thank you. Yeah. But I took my daughter, and I was able to look at her and said, "Don't talk. Put your head on my shoulder." It was wonderful. It was a good dad joke moment. And
she was like, "What the hell?"
She's like, about? "Get away from me!"
Yeah, I was there. She totally rolled her eyes.
She did. It was wonderful. But I enjoyed it. Hey, as someone whose first concert was Donnie and Marie Osmond.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know that probably excites you.
Well,
Tim,
not the Donnie and Marie so much. But
like crazy horses.
Yeah,
that was my first concert at the county fair. Thanks, Mom. So I vowed that I would bring my daughter to a better first concert, and I took her.
Oh, that's nice. It's
Brian Wilson performs Pet Sounds on the 50th anniversary. Yeah.
I guess my first I think I've talked about this. My first concert was Stevie Wonder. I was 4 years old and got fussy and made my parents leave like halfway through.
Shame on you.
Anyway.
You were probably just sad that he wasn't playing I Just Called to Say I Love You.
Oh, I think he did.
I'm sure.
It was the tour
right
for that
time.
album. Yeah. So don't talk.
Clearly his best. Yeah, no, great song. Just hazy.
Mm-hmm. And like there's a little bit of timpani, and it's almost like a teaser for the next track. It goes well into that next one because it just has a little bit of that, and then the next one is heavy on the timpani.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say really quickly. So, Don't Talk has this like hazy, like heavy atmosphere, but then in the later stages when the strings just start to swell just a little bit, it kind of pulls that out just a little. It's like the clouds start to break. So good
stuff.
God, this album, it's pretty good.
It's pretty good. It's okay.
This album's all right.
Track 5, I'm Waiting for the Day. Yeah, great. Yeah, it's great. What else can you say?
Boy, these songs are pretty good on this album.
Yeah. I mean, this is, what do I actually have written down? This is my favorite song on track 1, possibly.
On side 1?
Side 1.
Wow.
I have it, fucking banger. I wasn't, the English horn is doubling his vocal in the verse. At first I was like, what the hell is that? Is it a cello or an oboe? And then it's an English horn, which is basically a bass oboe, I learned.
Okay.
It's a double reed. Drums, percussion are so good. Great fucking song. Those are my notes.
Yeah. It's fantastic.
It's so good. Yeah.
I like the little ding, 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 ding thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have a question for you, both of you. I'm Waiting for the Day. Is this a happy song or is this a sad song? And maybe conversely, is this a happy album or a sad album?
It's neither.
Well,
it's again emotionally complex.
This is the one. It's about. It's like a. I don't want to say friend zone because it's such a negative connotation these days. But it's like. Well, so it says the boy falls in love with a broken-hearted girl. So she just broke up, and he's there. He's like, "Hey, I'm here," but then she's not ready for that, and so I'm waiting for the day when you can love again. He's like putting himself out there.
So it's like it's kind of
complex, but it's kind of like forward-looking. Kind of like, wouldn't it be nice?
Right.
We'll have more freedom when we're older. We can get married and be adults. And like here, it's like, well, I'm waiting. This is maybe something that can happen, in the future. It's hopeful in a way.
Yeah. It's intriguing just because I was reading some criticism and I found this one criticism that said that from Narens, who said that this album should be illegal because in a world so fucked up like the one we're unfortunately living in, making music that pretends to be happy is treason. I'm just so angry when listening to this piece of shit.
That's a bad take.
Despite all that some tracks...
That guy's part of this fucked up world.
Can't really remember which are mildly interesting.
Who was that?
Narens, a user on Rate Your Music, who gave it 1 star.
Well,
Yeah.
Loser.
that's just an internet troll.
You want to know what my
Well, I'm not done with...
Hold on. Here's my Rate Your Music because I just have the page pulled up. It says masterpiece doesn't even begin to cover it. That's my review.
Yeah.
10.
Yeah.
Well, I was curious about Narens, this critic who said this album is happy and treasonous. I wanted to see what they considered a 5-star album.
Oh, yeah.
And I was convinced I was looking for Eric Clapton because certainly Eric Clapton would be a 5-star album.
Van Halen?
But I couldn't get to Eric Clapton because there were 5 pages of 5-star reviews for every release by Buckethead.
There you go.
That's very weird.
Yeah. Literally every release of Buckethead.
Just soulless, robotic, mega guitars.
Cool
playing.
stuff.
Thank you, Narens, for your contribution to music
Anyway,
journalism.
Glad.
I get annoyed when I
because-
see people who have like put a 4.5 on there for Pet Sounds. Like, get a fucking clue, man.
Right.
Seriously,
A 1.
4.5.
But that's the beauty of a song like "I'm Waiting for the Day" is
Such a big Buckethead fan, even writing reviews for Beach Boys albums.
Because of these trolls who get on Rate Your Music and like, I gotta make sure Buckethead, gets.
well, in our next episode, I'll bring some more because there's some fun ones. But I just couldn't. That whole idea of is this album sad or is this happy or is this phony or is it thin is a joke. Like that's the beauty
It's
of
complex,
this.
but you know
It's
what?
super
Who musically really captures the complexity of this world? Buckethead.
Buckethead. Right.
All right, let's go away for a while.
Okay.
No, I don't mean that literally. It's a song.
This is the next song. Yeah, it's great. Apparently, maybe Burt Bacharach influenced.
Yeah.
Very
And again,
loungy,
that
very
exotica-y
cool.
kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
very
yeah.
exotica. Kind of has a on Broadway thing, right? Is that this one? The kind of.
That's great. Again, so warm. This one, I know at least one of the 2 instrumentals. I'm pretty sure it was this one. They had planned to actually make it a lyric song.
That was this one, yeah.
They didn't, and I think wisely. I don't know. I haven't sat around trying to think. Okay, how do you work a melody into it? Because it's fucking great already. But it's a nice little reprise,
right? And it kind of shifts.
Not reprise, but a respite,
right? And
That's
it kind of
that weird
shifts.
R word that I rarely use.
It shifts gears a little bit. It almost is like a multi-movement thing, but not really.
Oh, well, totally, because it gets into that really like watery. Bing,
Yeah.
The little, those great reverb wood blocks that he pulls out there. Ah, great, so great,
good stuff. And yeah, I think Brian decided it was just good the way it was. Like there was supposed to be a melody and lyrics. But
And that's the difference. This is the point in a formulaic Beach Boys album where we would put a quote unquote filler track. And there's none of that here.
Mike talking.
Like,
Why
exactly.
isn't there a song or a track in here where Mike Love just makes stupid fucking jokes?
That's a good question.
And this
You sing
instrumental's
like Mickey Mouse.
so good. So good. So good it doesn't even need. And I love that it's I'm looking at the track listing or the credits and just violins and all of so many names contributed to it. And I love that it lists Brian Wilson as the composer, right? Which is fitting. Like that's of course, no Mike Love or writer credit Mike Love lyrics.
I'm surprised he didn't try to.
No lyrics. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Final track of side 1, side A.
Yeah.
Sloop John beat.
Yeah.
So great.
Al.
Fucking great.
Great.
Right. Apparently Al didn't get any credit for his contribution to the arrangement, which there's a whole anecdote apparently from it's either an article or a book that Al wrote where he talks about like he's the folky guy and he was always into the idea of doing Sloop John B or something, Kingston Trio related. But Brian told him he wasn't into the Kingston Trio and didn't really like that song. But Al sat down at a piano and played it for him, but with like changing up the chord structure a little bit and putting in some like minors and things like that, relative minor stuff. I don't even know. It's music theory. But like Brian was kind of like a little bit more into it. And then I guess Al came back a day later and it was all written or maybe even recorded. And he was just like, wow, apparently Brian took it and ran with it and just did the whole like Beach Boys version, which is great.
So good.
So good. I just listened to the Kingston Trio version today, and it's so lame. But it is basically the same structure and everything, slightly different lyrics. This is just, it takes it to a whole nother level.
The arrangement is what's brilliant here.
And there's a lot of layers. Iconic bass line. The Carol Kay work there. It's a little bit fuzzy, but not too much. Just kind of like a little bit distorted at the high end, like just barely.
It's glockenspiel.
Perfect.
Good stuff.
12-string again. Yeah. Love it. Yeah, just really, really lush arrangement, and you get a whole like group vocal thing too. They're trading off verses. The chorus is fantastic. Some people like point to this as like, it's the weak song. No, it's not.
No, it's not.
First off, there's no weak song, and second, it's just great. It's so catchy.
Great. First time I heard this was on the Forrest Gump soundtrack.
I knew that was coming.
One of my favorites.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of the criticism is like, oh, Brian didn't write it. It's not introspective. It's just a cover. It's a traditional. But someone pointed out, was it Dear Goddess?
Might have been Buckethead.
It might have been Buckethead. It was someone named Fusili, who I don't know who that is.
Fusili Jerry?
Fusili Jerry pointed out that it still has themes of self-doubt. It portrays a sailor who feels completely out of place in a situation, which is in keeping with the general feeling of a disorientation. And then Jim DeRogatis agreed, saying that I want to go home part is exactly like a Brian Wilson type thing happening there.
It's like, that's not me. Right?
Yeah,
It's a lament.
It fits. It totally fits.
Totally does. This is how you do a cover. Well, it's transformative.
Yeah, absolutely.
It has their identity in it. It's owned.
Yeah. Good shit.
Brilliant.
Good song. Good side.
Yeah, it's all right.
It's okay.
It's pretty good.
You know what? It stinks.
Hey, there's 2 filler tracks on this side. There's an instrumental and a cover. They suck.
Yeah, totally. I'm just scanning the whole like front page of Rate Your Music reviews here. So per page, there's only like 10 reviews that'll show up on it, and all of them except for 2 are 5 stars. The 2 that are not are those fucking 4.5. Come on, give me a break, people. 4.5.
Almost perfect.
Yeah. Oh, if you just add a little bit of car song to it,
I would have put some kazoo in this one or some slide whistle.
Yeah, there you go. Actually, there is some slide whistle. Yeah, right?
Well, I on Smile, I think.
I mean, definitely Smile. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, let's take one last little break, and we'll come back and wrap it all up here.
Yeah.
We are back to wrap it up. Yeah, that's right. We're going to come back next week and talk about the second half of Pet Sounds.
Selfishly, so I can listen to Pet Sounds a little bit more.
We're just, going to make ourselves listen to this record again.
Bummer.
Yeah. And we'll talk about the influence, the impact,
right.
Some of the present day thoughts on
reviews will be read.
We'll talk about reissues,
some criticisms,
things like that.
Yeah, that'll be good. I like it.
Oh yeah, there's been a ton.
Yeah.
Good
covers.
Stuff.
There's a
Glenn
cover.
keeps trying to make me listen to these terrible.
There's a couple we'll get to.
Yeah.
So we'll touch on those. Hey, in the meantime.
Hold on. While we're on the subject, let's just maybe not get. This is dangerous territory. Okay, like
don't turn me loose here.
When we talk about covers, we should leave it till later. Okay, but
the music's gonna run out.
Well, I know. As we were doing the whole, David Bowie's, best worst. The album that is almost as bad as Never Let Me Down is called Tonight. And on that album, he covers God Only Knows, and it is god-awful.
Save it! Save it! That is on side 2, Matt.
Even the mighty Daniel Johnston
that is on the B-side.
Tried to cover God Only Knows, and that's also awful.
I haven't heard
No,
it.
it's not.
It's not
I'm going to
good.
go listen to David Bowie
we're gonna be
and
back
Daniel
next,
Johnston.
Shut up, Glenn. We're going to be back next week. We're going to talk about the second half and all that other stuff. So
go see Talkin' Beach Boys on
all that.
Instagram.
Strange Currencies music, all that.
I rated it Brian.
Okay, Brian.
All right, we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye. Later.